about the latissimus dorsi. Now, going back to the lower trapezius, I will mention that it is very tempting for people in the rehabilitation world or in the training world to try to specify individual muscles. The lower trapezius is one of those ones that you try to specify when in terms of treating by doing like Y's and I's and T exercises. I really go against training muscles specifically. I don't think that people should have specific muscles in mind when they're training. I don't like hearing that I'm doing a back chest today, and biceps, triceps tomorrow, and quads and hams the next day. I don't think that separating muscles for exercise is a great idea. I think what you should be doing is training movements, because the goal of all training is to get better at moving. Now, depending on how you define better, you can define better as moving with more power, moving for longer periods of time with more endurance, moving throughout a greater range of motion with more mobility, which is actually another way of saying becoming more agile. So I think that training the movement of the body is a much better approach than training muscles, because you're never really training the inferior trapezius. You cannot specify the inferior trapezius in and of itself, just like you can't specify the vastus medialis. And you have people that have patellofemoral pain syndrome, and their therapist is doing all of these wild and wonderful things to try to specify the VMO. I mean, first of all, there's no such thing as the VMO. It's not a separate muscle. The VMO is simply referring to the oblique portion of the vastus medialis, which is angled at 55 degrees to the patella. It doesn't mean it has its own epimysial encasement. It doesn't have its own innervation. And you cannot specify, I want to train only the VMO. It just doesn't work that way. You can specify timing. You can change timing differentials and when things activate, for example, help the timing of the VM-VL contraction, but you can't train the VMO specifically. And researchers tried to do this many, many times over. So similarly, when you're talking about scapular stability, you can talk about doing a push-up plus and say that I'm training the serratus anterior right now for scapular stability. Then I'm going to do rhomboid exercises for training scapular stability. Then I'm going to do lower and middle trapezius exercise for training scapular stability. It's really false, because usually when you're doing any of those, you're going to be training all of those muscles at the same time. What you're really doing, what your training goal is I want to stabilize the scapula as I teach the body how to move with the scapula stabilized. So I want to improve peripheral movement while increasing central stability. And that's what core training is. Core training is not, I'm going to train the L4-5 multifidus to become stronger. That's not what you're doing. Core means, well, by definition should mean, you're trying to improve peripheral mobility while maintaining core stability. Okay? You're trying to improve articular stability while your spine is moving. Okay? So you want to improve peripheral stability while maintaining core, but you also want to maintain structural stability in the spine while your spine is moving. And that's another thing that confuses people, because people think that you always have to train with your body lined up. And one of my colleagues, Ido Portal, who's a movement teacher, he talks about something called the improper alignment speech, which is pretty much saying that a lot of manual therapists, a lot of rehabilitation specialists, a lot of trainers always want to stress proper alignment when they're training. So you want neutral spine at all time, and you want to be upright as you're training. You don't want to get out of alignment at any time. And the problem with that concept is that as soon as you go from the gym onto the ice, or from the gym onto the field, or from the gym into the cage, the first thing that's going to happen most likely is your body's going to be put into a improperly aligned position, and it's going to be challenged in that position. Now, what is the person going to do when all they've done for their whole career is bird dogs and side planks and sit-ups in this fashion when that person is being thrown or when the person is being body checked? in a position where they're about to pass the puck and their spine is already out of alignment. Now, if you're being very specific, like we were talking about before, and you're only training core in order to improve the strength of the abdomen when you're perfectly aligned, you're going to miss strengthening the body when you're out of alignment, which is really important. That doesn't mean I want you to go out and deadlift with bad form, or I want you to put yourself into a torqued position and start to throw around heavy weights. You have to also keep in mind the principle of progressive adaptation, which means that you have to add training loads in very, very small increments to allow the body substantial time in order to adapt itself to those loads. Injuries occur when the load imparted exceeds the load absorbing capability of the body. So as long as you keep the imparted load under the load absorbing capability, you will not become injured. And that is the art of rehabilitation. You can read 1 million rehabilitation textbooks, and you can read 1 million protocols as to how to rehabilitate this injury, this injury, this injury, and that's just as useless as training this muscle versus this muscle versus this muscle. Because when you're rehabilitating something, it's the same thing. You're not rehabilitating a something. You're improving the quality of a particular movement, and you're improving the quality of a particular tissue that has been injured. And how do you improve that quality? By imparting very small progressive loads and allowing the body time to adapt to said loads. And that's rehabilitation defined. That's all you ever really need to know about your rehabilitation.